All right, hey. Let's see if this is doing a thing or not. I have no idea. Checking the work. Does seem to be doing a thing. Hi, it's me, Michael, and we are doing a discussion tonight. This is in conjunction with UW Stout's DES 375 digital cinema class. The course, hopefully those guys are going to be sitting in and listening in too. And I'm going to do something real quick and make sure it's not going. Are you guys seeing anything yet? Crap-a-doodle-doo. All right, let's see. Going live now. Okay. It's acting like it's doing a thing. Refreshing. Please stop all attempts. Yeah, it's kind of working. Okay, so big lag on Facebook. And oh my God, the captions are working great. Okay, good. So let's see. We'll see if we can bring in some of our guests here and see if that works too. So first time out of the gate here using Telestream Wirecast software. So learning curve. It's only going to Facebook. It looks like instead of both platforms, but perhaps we'll be surprised. I don't know. So we've got a number of people lined up tonight who are independent filmmakers, who are screenwriting savvy folks who do a lot of independent work, and we'll be hearing from, I think, a lot of different perspectives. We're going to get right on first with our first gang. Let's see if I can make them appear and be heard as we go to there. How's that? I see you guys. Are you able to hear me?
I can hear you.
We can hear you.
All right. This is Merc Rustad and Siah Kofoed.
Hello.
These are Minneapolis-based filmmakers. I would like to call them unstoppable, indomitable, and prolific. Why don't you guys introduce yourself, and we'll get some of these topics going here.
I can go first. So I'm Siah. There it goes. I can see things now. I too am learning how to use all this, so this is fun. I am a screenwriter and producer combination. Also, a bit of tech in feature filmmaking. I also do indie shorts. Have been in commercial work, kind of pretty much all across the board for me.
And how is it going now with things the way they are?
Everything's on pause on the production side, at least, but we are getting writing done.
Yes.
Yeah.
It has been a boost.
It has.
And Merc, you kind of come from a narrative background, a prose background, but also a filmmaker.
Yes, so mostly I write prose, short fiction, science fiction, fantasy, horror, and then I also work with Siah a lot doing indie shorts, some features. I'm usually behind the camera.
Yeah, but as a writer, natively, we've got a lot of opinions about this kind of stuff. So let's get right on to the writing stuff since we lost a little time getting launched there. In terms of writing, what do you guys consider your sort of specialty or your corner of the ring? What's your area of expertise?
I'd like to say mine is probably mostly dealing with the societal issues that I see happening in this world. Script I'm finishing up right now is about a school shooting, and kind of where that is going to go is surprising quite a few people. So
yeah,
not going to give too many spoilers. So,
right. So is everything that you write intended to be produced?
Yes.
Yeah. So you're not writing spec stuff with the hope of somebody else doing it with a bigger budget. You're always writing for the budget. What do you think the secret to that is? Is there one?
For me, I like to think about not going out of what I think we can do. And every production I've done or have been a part of that I've produced, whether that be a short or something longer, it's always been such a great learning experience for me to figure out like what four of us are capable of when running.
A lot.
Yeah. You know what? I don't really come into production with exactly what this is intending to look like. Usually I'm just like, I don't know, like
Yeah, you're willing to roll with the punches independently as you have to. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that the story getting across correctly is really the most important to me.
Good, good. How do you guys start a thing? And this can extend to, prose stuff as well there, Merc. What's the first step you take?
I like to have.
Oh my goodness. Tater Tot, get out of the recycling.
Oh, that
we have a cat joining us here. I like to have a plan for where things are kind of going, whether that's like the outline for my prose fiction or having like a production plan for films. So we kind of know like, hey, it's going to take, this amount of time and we're going to need these resources and probably this many people. Kind of having a master plan sorted out before I really start the creating process really helps. And so we're not diving in and suddenly we're like, oh my gosh, we need 50 actors right now. And nobody shows up.
So what does an outline look like for you, Merc?
Sorry, what?
What does an outline look like for you? What's your
An outline usually looks, for me, it would have the major plot points, kind of where it's going to start, where I want it to end, and then the major conflicts within the middle. A lot of the connective tissue between those points. It's more of a discovery process, but I definitely like having a solid, act 1, 2, 3 or more kind of nailed down, so I have a direction to go towards when the actual writing or creating happens.
Sure, and you do kind of a 4-act thing regardless of the length of the project?
Pretty much, yeah. I like that that structure.
Good. So is it any different for you?
No, I do have another writer, another student who went to Art Institute with us, Maya Baker. Oh, yeah. She co-writes with me, owns 50% of the script usually.
Oh, great.
So we are more able to really sort of like when I have an outline, it's kind of just like how exactly everything's going. So if I open it up and I want to work on the script, I know what she's thinking and vice versa.
Totally.
Do you guys write like literally, like start to finish, or do you jump around a lot?
Usually it'll start with like the big idea, and then because I as a writer definitely have trouble sometimes connecting things.
Yeah.
How do you share responsibilities on these where you're not the only writer? How do you split up the work?
Yeah. I like also a reason to have an outline is because I don't actually write linearly, so I will jump around a lot. Yeah. So having that structure really helps me keep things on track, even if I'm writing scenes that are out of order before, one scene before this scene. And then when I do revisions, it's like starting at the beginning and working through the end to make sure it all makes sense.
When you start, do you know your ending always?
90% of the time.
Yeah, wow. Good.
I'm usually the one figuring out the ending.
You know it. Somebody has to tell you. Good. So for writing for the indie, writing for the shoot, writing for what you're able to do, what do you think, what are some key pieces of advice?
I have a lot of trust in what my team can pull off, and what they need to do their job. I try to keep shoots as low key as possible, so I'm not overwhelming everyone.
Yeah.
Sometimes that gets a little difficult, especially when you might have like a location hang up or something, but any of the locations we've worked with have been super great.
Yeah.
If we're not having a good time, there's always some very nice family member or friend who's willing to to have us come be there. I really like to kind of just like lowball my budget by a lot. I give most of my budget to my actors and my crew and kind of the people who make the thing happen.
Right.
Is really
Yeah, for like indie films and shorts, I like to like when writing for that specifically, I try to think of slightly smaller scale ideas, just because I know budget is going to be a factor, and so keeping like the cast as minimal as possible, and then no wild locations like Mars or something that we probably wouldn't be able to feasibly, make a set for or something, which also kind of helps like focusing on what we want to do. Like you can still tell wide range of stories with the themes that you want to explore, but in a more of a feasible indie filmmaker way. So because we don't have the budget for a lot.
Does that force your hand in terms of story ideas?
I wouldn't say specifically, not really, because I like to focus on both character and like thematics when I'm writing, so that you can do an incredible amount with very low budget and resources. So like, and especially when we have character focus, it gives the actors a lot of material to work with, and they can kind of bring their own special spark to that, which I think really helps elevate stuff, even if it doesn't have a big budget or special effects.
Right. So, go ahead.
Most, like when I've encountered more large budget productions in Minnesota, it's always been like they're spending all their money on like the one camera to have like an Ari Alexa.
Right.
And I'm like, okay.
Audiences love that, from what I hear. They demand. The only movies I'm interested in are ones that are shot on really expensive cameras.
Yep. That you don't even know till the end credits when it says shot on the Ari.
Yeah. Well, obviously somebody knows. You stuck around to the end of the credits, so it's not completely lost on us. But how are you guys rounding up budgets these days? Is it out of pocket?
When I do,
pretty much.
yeah. When I we're trying to get like a Patreon set up. The director that is interested in coming on board to my personal company is wanting to play the investor angle, and so we're kind of just in the process, or I'm kind of just in the process of wrangling the team to actually get stuff finished and out. But life happens.
It does. So, from my experience, I know that trying to do, and you're talking the school shooting one as a feature, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. So doing a feature and working at the same time is really challenging.
Yeah.
The big factor for me was that it would take longer than it should have, because you relegated all of I'm going to shoot on the weekends, so it'll be great.
Yeah.
And suddenly it becomes a 3-year project instead of a 1-year project. And, because you've lost a third of the time or 2/3 of the time that most people have. Yeah. And that's where maybe the budget comes in, to allow you to stop. We must stop, and we're making the thing, and that's our only thing we do.
Yep. Yeah, I've mostly just done shorts, but it's pretty much all out of pocket, so it depends on, okay, I have to work for this amount of time, then have a weekend, and it's this much to spend, and that's about it.
It's pretty accurate.
Do you guys have any advice for people who are in the same boat? You're a couple of years out of school, working some jobs, and want to be able to continue to make your product. How do you guys manage?
You have a really good answer for this,
so like advice for like writing, I feel like no idea that you have is going to be too weird. So if it really interests you and excites you, go ahead and write it. I mean, not everything can get made, obviously, but don't hold back, because your enthusiasm will definitely go a long way into keeping you motivated to finish the project, and it gets other people excited. And we occasionally go on to like Amazon Prime and watch absolutely bizarre movies. So, like I said, no idea is too weird.
Yeah, exactly. If you make the mistake of diving too deep in Amazon, which has a very low bar for getting your content on, you can see that it is possible to do it, and it should encourage you. Have you thought about distributing your stuff on there, or do you?
I think we've.
I'm getting there.
Getting there.
Yeah. I'm attempting to get the LLC license and all that kind of up and about. That's taken me a really long time, just because it's
process.
It's a process.
It's legal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good. I'm very excited that you're moving on to.
The content is copyrighted and all that. And
sure.
I have all that.
Yeah, Amazon requires that you have certain technical specs in place and captions, and that's about it. But yeah, you want to be able to say that, yeah, we own these likenesses, this music is paid for, all the
legalities,
saves you later. Yeah, so great.
And Wayne Johnson helps me with all that.
Yeah, lots of experience doing those. That's great. What I want to do is open it up to questions for you guys, and I believe we'll be looking down at the comments there for that.
Sure.
If we don't get any instant takers, what I'll do is we'll switch on over to our second guest, and you guys can just have little conversations down in the footer.
Sure. All right.
So that was brief, but I want to thank you guys for coming on.
Yeah, thank you. This is a lot of fun.
Maybe we should can we do a premiere of something of yours down the road here on this channel?
Yeah,
we would love that.
That would be awesome.
Right. Yeah.
That sounds great. Okay. Thanks, guys, very much.
Yeah, no problem. Bye.
Bye.
All right, so let's take a quick break, and I'm going to plug Ron Purtee in. Ron is a Racine area comedian and prolific filmmaker. He's a very busy boy, making lots and lots of movies. I think he says he's been at it for about 10 years, so we'll be right back after I switch the media. All right, I think I did it. Let's take a look. I'm going to check Ron on camera 5. Is that Ron? Ron, are you audible?
I think so.
You're definitely audible. I'm going to check you on 4 here. That's what you look like on 4. Here's our 3 package. If we get any questions here, we might be able to see those. And it looks like we're good to go. So, Ron, welcome.
Hey, it's me.
Now, Ron, you've done a lot of this yourself on YouTube. You've got a channel that's been going for years, and you've interviewed all sorts of people, famous actors. And tell us a little bit about that, too, before we get kicked in here.
I've actually, the list goes on. A bunch of people from the show Sons of Anarchy. If you remember the show Wilfred with Elijah Wood? I interviewed the creator twice. And I actually, what's funny about that is I actually called the ending of the show, and he had to tell me off the air that I was right. I was like, yes, but I couldn't say shit. Pardon my French. Couldn't say anything. Anyway, awesome. I had Peter Weller on multiple times, RoboCop. That was awesome. A lot of fun. And then, do you mind if I plug something real quick?
Let's do it.
This Friday on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Ron Purtee at 1 p.m. Central Time, I will be interviewing live on the air Joe Bob Briggs.
Hey, all right.
So, I mean, that's kind of. I would also like to point out that is an amazing Friday the 13th hat. I just want to let them know that was an awesome Friday the 13th. Jason's my boy.
Saya said that she was going to have a Jason shirt on, so I don't know if
I'm wearing a Days of the Dead, the festival in Chicago, so I'm rocking that. But.
I'm just doing Japanese Terminator poster. I'm keeping it simple.
I have a Texas Chainsaw Massacre shirt, and the entire shirt is the Spanish poster.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got a real big sync question with your picture here, but I don't think it matters because it sounds like our voices are relatively in sync. Let's what's your specialty? Where are you coming from?
I guess if you want to look at my entire career, it would be horror and horror adjacent, with comedy a very close second.
Right.
So
You wouldn't lead with comedy?
Comedy and horror, for my money, are a lot alike because you have to hit certain marks and there's timing involved, and if you mess it up, you're gonna ruin everything. So.
Right. Yeah, and they are very related, aren't they? And I believe that the best horror stuff, you've got the release of comedy in there too. So.
Yeah, like there's a segment in the original Chainsaw that you're so tense the entire movie, and then when they get back to spoiler for a 50-year-old movie, and then when they get back to the house. And the cook sees the door and he yells out, "Look what your brother did to the door!" I cannot stop laughing. And then that's when everything ramps up after that. So
that's right. That's great. Can I hear about what you're working on now?
I'm kind of just in between projects, kind of. I'm supposed to be shooting something, a short tonight for a film festival. It's like a weekly film festival.
Yeah. And
I'm supposed to be shooting something tonight for that, and since I'm super low budget on everything I do, I went out of my way to write the script so it's over a webcam, so it's like don't have to leave the house, don't even have to put on pants, and I can get a short made. So yeah.
Great. Well, I'm sorry to hold you up. You've been doing this basic concept though for about 10 years, doing horror shorts. Is that right?
Yeah, I started back in June or July, I forget which, of 2010, and I put out the first Becoming Undead movie, and Dread Central wrote about it, and they kind of picked it up, and I was kind of very, very, very shocked that it happened. And what's horrible about that is that your next film, you really have to ramp it up if your first one gets a ton of attention.
That's so hey, these guys are back on. Siah does have the Friday the 13th shirt on, so we can, if you want to give that another reveal. We missed it there. There we go.
Nice.
Oh, it's the jersey. It's the jersey. So it's
okay, nice.
That you can have both guests on at the same time. You guys mind hanging out in the corner up there? Okay, good.
Okay. Hi. So yes. So I did Becoming Undead, and then I did the Social Media Massacre, which turned into a web series where I focused on the dark sides of social media. So I will not lie. Every time I see something like Unfriended come out or something like that, I get super, super pissed.
Yeah, you were there first, man.
I was there. Well, actually, I wasn't there first. There was another, and the filmmaker's name escaped me, but the Collingswood story was kind of shot over webcams back when we were still using like really old webcams. So that was kind of the impetus for the whole thing, but I took it further, damn it. And then in between I kind of made little film, and then I made Becoming Undead 2, and that got nominated for a Rondo Hatton Award, which I have no idea how. I went to go see, I needed an escape from my reality, so I went to go see the Need for Speed movie with Aaron Paul because I wanted to kill my brain. And I come home to a bunch of texts saying, "Hey, congratulations, congratulations." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And I look, and I'm nominated for a Rondo, and I had no idea what the hell was going on. That's nice. So I was in the same company as Sven Gulli.
Good accent. Good problem to have.
Yes, it's a great problem to have. Yeah. Sorry, I had to open a new soda. I drank all your liquor and smoked all your dope.
You're lucky. I'll join you here. Quick.
Yes, there you go.
What's your motivation? Why do you keep doing this to yourself?
Why do I keep doing? Well, that's a good question. I hate myself. But I don't know. I just feel like I have to. It's one of those things where it's like if you don't, and I don't know how they feel about this, but for me, if I'm not making something, even if it's like a little sketch in my living room, or if I'm not, getting something together, I feel sick to my stomach. Like I have to do something. I have something inside of me that needs to get out, like the alien in Alien. And if it doesn't get out, then I'm going to end up just like John Hurt.
Exactly. Hey, Siah and Merc, do you agree on that one?
Yeah. Yes, we do. I know that my dreams get really intensely weird if I don't have outlets for writing consistently.
Are any of you guys friends with Mark Borchardt, Milwaukee-based filmmaker on Facebook or anything?
I met him once at a film festival where he was getting an award for like being the backbone of horror. And then I actually have the video. I'll send it to you.
Oh,
he actually gets up there and he goes, yeah, I'm not really a big horror fan. I'm more into Bergman and Fellini. I'm like, oh my God.
It's true. So I had class with him in college, but I noticed today he posted that he doesn't understand how people can be bored. And can you please will all of your spare time to him so that he can do more things with his life? You know, creatives, it's really weird to see non-creatives just kind of, oh, I'm bored. There's no such thing. We got so much to do, so many stories to tell.
Yeah, I knocked out a script yesterday in about 20 minutes. It was just for the short that we're shooting tonight. And it was just one of those real quick things. And I was like, I got this huge rush of adrenaline as I'm doing it. And then the minute I'm done with it and I look at it, I'm like, okay, well, this is good. You know, and then I'm like, oh, now I'm kind of, what can I? Better Call Saul's on. I'll watch that. Yeah, you know.
So let's take that one as an example. Where does it come from? How do you approach it? And how do you do it so fast?
I usually, when I get in there, I usually have the ending already done before I go in. I know how I'm going to end it, and then I write backwards. Or what I'll do is I'll do the sandwich thing. I'll have a beginning and I'll have a middle, or I'll have an end, and then I just got to worry about the baloney in the middle. That actually happened when I did my last film for sale. I had help in the middle part. There's this horror company out in the UK called Bloody Cuts, and I become friendly with them. And one of the people who does most of the writing, I sent him the script, and he's like, well, what if you add this, this, and this? I'm like, oh, okay. So then I added it in there. And I'm like, well, do you want your name on this? No, I don't. I'm like, oh, well, that's either you being really nice or you think this is shit. So it's a lot of knowing where you're going from the start and then knowing where you're going to end and just trying to find the best road from A to B.
Let me ask both candidates here. Character. Ron, what's your approach? In a short, you're dealing with easy to recognize types, right?
For the most part, I mean, I kind of, when it comes to character, I have a hell of a lot harder time creating a character in 5 minutes than someone who has 90 minutes to do it. That's like, I hate going back to For Sale again, but there was a lot of character that had to be, so it was really dialogue heavy, and we shot 9 pages of dialogue in 4 hours on location. It wasn't in my, it wasn't, but that's one of those situations where, and I'm noticing this, my best films are when I'm not shooting it, when I have somebody else as a DP. Yeah. And when we shot For Sale, I had a buddy of mine, Mike Detterman, who's an amazing DP. I just let him go. I just said, you do what you want to do, and let me deal with the actors. And it worked out great. It worked out fantastic.
Yeah, that's my favorite. That's my favorite flavor as well. How about you guys? Yeah?
Yeah, I tend to have way more complex characters because I just have time, you know?
Yeah, when I do shorts, I like to have like and this is kind of true and when I write short fiction as well, it's doing like a big singular personality trait that kind of like drives the character. Mm-hmm. Since it's such a short piece, you have like this one, you know, they're super chatty or whatever the trait ends up being that
a little hook
you focus on.
Yeah, you see a lot of bad things about film producers and directors like Michael Bay, but it seems like one of the things that he does right is he can give you a type in like one sentence.
Yep.
Because that person's either going to like die or disappear a second later. So you're able to, it's him, and it's usually funny, and he does a pretty good job of like, I only have a few seconds. I'm going to give this person something good to sink their teeth into. So Ron, talk about organizing your material. How do you begin, and when do you kick it in?
Well, here's my issue is I always have a hard time writing a feature-length script. I get to like 17, 18, 19 pages, and I can't go any further. Even if I take like note cards and I write out the beats and everything, it's just really hard for me to get going. I have a project I'm working on now with someone where I'm writing a couple episodes of a radio play. It's like an anthology radio play, and he's like, well, I need like 20 to 22 minutes. I'm like, oh Christ. But
that's my breaking point. I do 17. Great.
Yeah, dude. Can you just put a big old commercial in the middle? So I'm trying to figure out how to get past that, but I don't want to use the term successful with shorts, that it doesn't really push me to make features. I mean, I have a feature out. It's an autobiographical documentary that has a lot of my shorts in it, my stand-up, some of my interviews, actually interviews with people that you're friendly with there, Michael. My MST3K interviews in that one.
Sure, good.
It's just kind of, I don't know, but like I like being able to cram everything into such a short period of time, and it kind of makes me think that maybe I was made to write for television, because I write like a half hour worth of stuff maybe, or write enough that somebody else can come in and say, well, why don't you add this, and this, and then go in, and you know what I mean, that kind of thing. So, I mean, I did grow up watching more TV than movies at first, but
do you think your stand-up experience figures into that as well?
It helps me think on the fly when it comes to writing, because there are times when jokes just don't work, and I have to think of something else quick. I had an elderly couple walk out when I started doing my routine about how I asked the crowd, I say, do you think, I got a question for you guys. Do you guys think that Jesus faked his death for the insurance money? And they got up and they walked out. And that was, I had to really kind of deviate quick where I was headed. Because then I get into this whole thing about only knowing enough about Jesus, because all I know about Jesus is from The Last Temptation of Christ by Martin Scorsese, and it turns into this whole thing about.
Yeah, this is what happens when you watch too much TV and movies.
It's true.
It's a problem, folks. This is a warning to all who are listening. Let's see. What are you writing in? Are you using a particular application, screenwriting application?
I'm actually, I've been having issues with trying to find the perfect program. So what I did is I went and I found an add-on or a plugin or whatever you want to call it for Pages. And now I'm just writing in Pages, and I cranked that script out real quick. So I was pretty happy about that. Usually I used to use Celtics or whatever it's called. Yeah. But then they started like, oh, we're going to charge you. And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
So
it was so expensive.
How about you guys up top? What are you using to write?
Used to use, for scripts, I used to use Celltext, and then went to like the whole paid plan, and it's like it. So right now
it's hard at our level,
Yeah. For like prose stuff, I actually write in Sublime Text, so then I can use Markdown and then just export it so all the formatting's in there. Yeah. And it helps you focus without all the little shiny things in Word.
Cool. Hey, I could go on and on with you guys, but I've got my next guest lined up.
Awesome.
And apparently, with the way it's set up currently, we have the room is full, so I got to kick you guys out. Yeah. I think we need to do another episode. Ron, we'll have you back on again if this is a thing that we continue, because I want to, maybe we can dig in on a specific one of your movies and go deep. Likewise,
I'd be glad to let you show one of my films. No, I'm an indie filmmaker. No, don't show my stuff.
Yeah, no. I don't let that anywhere. Yeah, good. All right. Again, thanks so much, guys, and we'll
thank you.
We'll be right back with Lance Miller. Now, Lance, let's go over to here. Let's do this like this. Lance is going to be here in a second. He is a producer and writer at Plum Media. That's in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So I'm going to switch on over and get him hooked up technically. Here we go. All right, I'm going to try
Testing,
and see
1, 2, 3.
if I can hear you. How about now?
Up.
You're
Testing 1, 2,
frozen.
3.
You're looking a
Testing
little
1, 2,
frozen,
3.
but I can hear you.
You can hear me now? Yeah,
I can hear you.
my internet got a little choppy. You can hear me now?
All right. I tell you what, I'm going to pop back over to you and let's see if your picture catches up. 1 second. Okay. Hey.
Okay.
Here we go. Let's try that. Okay. So Lance is a video and producer of many things. He and I went to college together in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. We made a number of movies together as well. I was in one of his student projects for sure that I recall. And probably the reverse was true as well. Let's see if this works now. How you doing there, Lance?
I'm very well today. How are you?
Yeah, great. And it looks like we're back in sync. Looking cool. Okay.
Good.
I haven't talked to you in person for a really long time.
That's true. That's true. Absolutely.
This isn't in person. So I guess the track record continues.
Yeah, it's okay. It's as close as it's going to get. So
Close as any. For a second, when you came on, I thought you were wearing scrubs. So I got a little scared.
no, I'm okay.
Bring us up to date on what you've been up to.
Okay, so like Michael said, I've been involved in the indie film community here in Milwaukee for quite a long time. Worked on a lot of features, worked on a lot of shorts. Had one of my shorts go through the whole film festival circuit. Had a nice successful run there. Currently, I'm working with a bunch of people on writing a series. And I do have a day job in corporate video, which I can talk about if anybody needs to know a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think both of those subjects are going to be great. So, are you able to tell us anything about the series or no?
The series, I'm running it right now. It's kind of interesting. We sort of we know somebody who works at Netflix, and we've sort of been told that the standard right now is you're going to have to write the pilot, and you're going to have a breakdown of what happens in the first season, every episode, every act of every episode for the first season, and then they sort of want broad strokes for at least 3 seasons.
Wow, great.
Yeah.
For that.
So, right, yes.
That's there. Yeah, they. That's nice to know that they're maybe in for a commitment, or at least they want to know that you've thought it through.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wonder if a big part of that is just gatekeeping. Like, you don't get to be lazy and do one. You got to do the push-ups, and then we'll let you in. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And you said a feature as well, yeah?
I'm sorry, what?
Did you also say that you were working on a feature-length project?
All my features are kind of on the back burner right now. The series we're writing with a full writer's room and the whole bit has taken most of my time, and it's been quite eye-opening.
How long has that been going on?
A couple of years. When when we all have day jobs, and then so I can understand why it takes so long to make a series, but when you're only working a couple hours a week, it takes forever. Whereas these guys, we always say that when we're in the writer's room that if we could just do this for 8 hours, well, of course we could crank out something.
Well, I guess if they foot the bill, then you can maybe have those 8 hours, and that's when the rubber will hit the road, right?
Yeah, and that's one of the things. I'm not sure where everybody in the audience is in school, but one of the big things I took away from college was a group of filmmakers that I could trust, and so like everybody that I'm working with right now are all people I went to college with 30 years ago. So those bonds last a long time, and they are you will help each other in your industry immensely.
Hey, Lance, believe it or not, I'm getting evidence that your audio is not coming in. Talk for a second.
Okay.
Right there.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'm going to keep going.
Okay.
And see if anybody else comments on that.
Is anybody commenting in the positive that they are getting my audio?
Yes. Well, according to my levels, say ah.
Ah.
Yeah, see, it's in there. Okay. Very good. Now turn to the left and cough. No, I wanted to talk to you about getting things started, because many of the students are at that kind of a stage. Like, I've got an idea, I don't know what to do next. How do you approach the beginning, which is daunting for some?
Yes, I think the mistake that I make, and a lot of people make early on, is they worry too much about what's going to go on the poster. Okay, so basically the promise of the premise, like I'm not sure how much your students know about 3-act structure and all that sort of stuff. Okay. But what happens, in the beginning of the second act, what goes in the poster, the promise of the premise, that's what you spend a lot of your time thinking about. And that doesn't really get you anywhere because you're into the exciting part, but you're not into the nuts and bolts of your structure. So I always think about two things after I get over the euphoria of having a good idea. Number one, I think about the end, like where is it going, so I can backtrack and figure out the story. And the other thing is to think about the that you come up with the character first and then fit him into a story. Well, that's ridiculous. Okay, I think, because when you have an idea, hey, let's make a movie where we go after the Lost Ark of the Covenant. That's how that idea started. The idea did not start with, hey, wouldn't it be interesting if we did a movie about an archaeologist? It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen that way. Or the Terminator, right? They came up with the idea for the Terminator, and then they had to figure out an interesting person to put him up against, and then they picked his diametrically opposed person, a woman who is not a warrior in any shape. So think about the character and that character's journey, and I would also think about what makes a good ending, because a lot of times most of your ideas are a really good first, second act, but you really don't have an ending. So I would concentrate on those things.
So you think endings are harder than the middle?
No, I think the middle is the hardest, but I would say that the ending is probably, at least for me, after the concept, the ending, and then you backtrack, and that'll tell you the middle.
Yeah, should
but a lot of people will tell you that when you start getting down to the structure, the midpoint might actually be the most important place to go, because that's when sort of the fun of the whole thing is over. I mean, you have a movie and it's about finding the Lost Ark of the Covenant, right? Well, he doesn't find that at the end of the movie. That's not the ultimate goal. He finds the Lost Ark in the middle of the movie. Then where do you go? So
nice.
That's
very good.
That's kind of so I guess I would say after you come up with your premise, sort of think about the end, and then get right to that midpoint.
So we both learned screenwriting from the same professor. I'm guessing. I think we were probably in that class together, and they were working from. Do you remember what books they were working from? It was Sid Field, and
yeah, the big one that they were using at that time was The Art of Dramatic Writing by Lagos Egre. Yes. So
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Do you lean on any new books or?
Yes, I'm about to ask you what books have you been recommending, and what's everybody reading out there?
I haven't seen one that I've liked for a really long time, but all of them have a little bit of interesting stuff in it. There hasn't been like a Bible yet,
right?
So like the Truby book, forget what that dramatic something or other.
Yeah.
Even Save the Cat has got like a couple of kind of that's kind of a cool idea, and then there's a lot of other stuff. I think you have to read everything. But reverse engineering stuff that you like is pretty solid too, and you don't necessarily need a book for that. Because I'm thinking in many cases those authors did just that. They were just reverse engineering things that they liked.
Yeah, I'll make a one book, and I'll backtrack and say that favorite things. One of yours on the art of screenwriting is the Bitter Script Reader. I don't know if you follow him. I've ever heard of him.
Yeah.
No, okay. The Bitter Script Reader is a guy who was a script reader in Hollywood, and he became so embittered because he read so many awful scripts all the time that he started a blog about how to make scripts that get past people like him, the script reader at the studio. And he's got a Twitter, and he's got he's got his blog. He's very into the Blacklist, and he's delightful. So what he did, so what the Bitter Script Reader did was he took Log Egri, and he took Sid Field, and he took Robert McKee and Turnby or whatever. So he took all of their books and analyzed them and made a chart showing they all stories, and he layered the charts on each other, and he found that pretty much all those books say the same thing.
Yeah, I
right?
have to. Right.
The story is in 3 acts, and there's a midpoint, and at the end of the second act, the rug gets pulled off from underneath you, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, good.
Right. So when I approach the book I would recommend is Save the Cat. Here's why. Now, just so you know that eventually there's going to be a screenwriting snob in your life who's going to tell you that
That's
book
terrible.
is a terrible book. Okay, that will happen, right? But you have to remember, one of the things that Robert McKee talks about in his book Story is that there's a difference between formula and form. Most people think that when you read a script writing book, you're just buying into a formula. But a formula says you have to do it this way. Form says this works, okay? And so working under the premise that every screenwriting book basically tells you this around the same stuff, right? I thought, okay, which one is the most accessible and the easiest to understand? And that's why I recommend Save the Cat.
It is easy. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things is, like, if you have, like, I even wrote a couple terms down. There's like, there's like the beginning of the second act is always like the first counterattack, and then there's like the second reversal. The guy who starts with the T, Trueberry, what's his name?
Truby, I think.
Truby, yeah. He has all these incredibly complicated terms, right? Whereas Save the Cat has terms that you can easily remember, like fun and games, or
right.
all is. So you could basically, it's almost like Save the Cat sort of sums up every other screenwriting book.
It does, yeah.
So you can start with that one and then move on to the other ones. The other thing I would recommend would be Robert McKee's Story, which one of the key things that's in his book that is so interesting, or two things that I always carry with me, is you always have to try to defy the audience's expectations. You always sort of set up something, and then the opposite happens of what you're going to think. Really good example from not recently, but I always love in Toy Story 3, right? When they work so hard to get out of the childcare center, and then they immediately get put on the truck that gets sent to the garbage heap, right? So so you expect that they're going to escape, and they actually have just gotten themselves into worse danger. The other wonderful thing that McKee does that I haven't seen in any other screenwriting book is he talks about dilemma a whole lot. So he talks about how your character has to be sort of faced in the late third act with a dilemma. It can either go this way or it can go that way. And what the hero does is he comes up with a third choice. The audience is led to think that there's only two choices, this way or that way. We're going to win, we're going to lose, right? But the hero comes up with a third choice that brings in the B story and sort of brings everything together, and is a conclusion that is unexpected and satisfying. And I can tell you, if I was starting off studying screenwriting, what I would do sounds weird, but there's a show called My Name is Earl, right? And if you're familiar with that show, it's a show about a guy who realizes he's a bad person, and he makes a list of all these people that he wronged, and he goes to set things out. The first season of this show is a masterclass in dilemma storytelling. Every single episode, this guy it comes up with a solution that is unexpected and satisfying in a way that, if you thought he was going to do A or he was going to lose, he picks up the third way to do it, and it's way more satisfying it's more satisfying than if he would have done it the first way, if he would have got his way in the first time around. You know what I mean?
And I suppose that's an argument for know your ending, and then you can get your middle. Because if you can come up with, well, this is how you would solve it, I need to complicate that. What's my middle that wrecks that plan? Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
The arc is disappearing. How do I deal with it? Very good.
Yeah.
Cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I really think that we probably have a very big discussion if we just talked about your writing room experience with this project that you're doing. So I kind of want to save that and kind of go back to these kind of bigger issues that you're tackling, which is great. Yeah. So how do you start?
Like once you get the premise?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I think once you get the premise, you come up with you sort of design a character around that premise. Who would be the most interesting person? I'll give one of the coolest examples I can think of is the movie Castaway. Okay, so they probably approached it as, okay, we have a situation where a guy is going to be on an island, right? And they thought, well, what would make an interesting character that would have a problem living on a deserted island? Well, one thing about being deserted, you have no clocks and you have all the time in the world to do absolutely nothing. So let's think of a guy who's absolutely, completely obsessed with keeping time. And that's how they came up with, oh, let's get a guy who isn't a, works for FedEx. So I think that's the first thing is to come up with a character that is most challenged by your premise.
Perfect. Yeah, and at which point then the conflicts spring naturally from that, I suppose.
Right. And then, and if you have a movie that's not Castaway, where you have one single character, and then of course everybody you team him up with has to be his, you team him up with somebody who is the opposite. It's kind of like when a presidential candidate, when they get the nomination and they get their vice president who sort of fills in all of their weaknesses. So if your hero is old, you're probably going to hook them up with someone who's young. If a lot of times you balance a man with a woman, someone who is a very conservative personality with someone who is very outgoing and outrageous, that sort of thing.
Right, great. Have you seen some stuff lately that you thought they did it right? Where you've seen some of that in action?
Oh boy. I'm trying to think of examples that aren't like action adventure.
Yeah, when you talk about the template, it's pretty hard to to not go there.
Yeah, I can tell you that the thing probably in the last year that I've enjoyed more than anything was probably the Chernobyl miniseries. If you saw that, yeah. I mean, what was really cool about that is the relationship between the two characters. You have one who's a politician, one who's a scientist. They have very different personalities. And I must say, if you get a chance to look them up on the internet and download them, the scripts for the Chernobyl miniseries are fascinating. Okay, for two reasons. Well, two reasons. Okay. Number one, they always tell you in these screenwriting books, don't write down what's going on in the character's head because we can only see what we see. Right? He totally breaks that rule in very subtle ways that are extremely powerful. So you sort of, and I think it makes sense because you are giving instructions to an actor. The actor needs to know what is happening inside the character's head. So I think it's okay to sort of move beyond that rule that we've heard of for so long. So if you take a look at that script, it's a very powerful read.
So you're saying that in the script, there's the character's thought process is made evident, even if it doesn't make it to the screen.
Right. So there's a scene where the scientist character is reading a report in front of Gorbachev, and he's reading this, and he's sort of figuring out, oh my God, this accident is way worse than anybody thought, and he's just waiting for someone to speak up who's at a higher pay grade than him. And in the script, it says he starts rustling through the pages. Oh my God, can this be true? Why isn't anybody speaking up? So he just wrote the character's thought just as a line, and it's a fascinating read, but it doesn't, but it's done in such an obvious way that you don't lose track of what is happening, what we're supposed to be seeing as we're watching the story. I think it's fascinating.
Cool.
The other thing I can say about that is that's Craig Mazin, and his biggest credit prior to that is writing the Hangover sequels. So it just goes to show you that no matter what you're writing, you're always capable of more, and don't let people pigeonhole you into writing a certain kind of thing.
Has anyone pigeonholed you? What's your what are you known for?
I think in the corporate world, I'm known for more comedy stuff, but I don't mind being pigeonholed into that because that's one of the things that makes corporate media fun.
Right. Otherwise, it's not. It's not.
Yeah.
Let's switch over to talking about that because like I say, I do believe that we probably have a whole nother episode here talking about your series practice.
By the way, I might not be. I'm sorry, I might not be the best person to talk about that because our writers' room is out of control. I will tell you that one of the things we did in the writers' room is we went on Amazon and we bought these buzzers. So if you have like a game night and it's like on a TV game show, you go, eh. Once the conversation gets too much, people will just hit that buzzer and move on. The other thing that we're currently having a challenge of, so I guess this would be something to watch out for, is at what point when you're planning something do you say, okay, you know what, let's just leave this, we'll figure it out later, because we're having trouble figuring out how to realistically get one of our characters from China to the United States. And I think we spent about an hour figuring it out. And I said, I wish that we got more important broad strokes to cover. Can we just assume that we're smart enough to figure out eventually how a person gets from China to the United States realistically? So I think at some point that might have been a time to use the buzzer that we didn't.
Yeah, that's a thing that I keep seeing in finished films is that they gloss over the unnecessary. If it's not dramatically important how they got from A to B, audience doesn't care. Like, I can be sitting in the room with several people and I'm the only one who brings that up, and it's kind of like who cares? Or I know people who are really worse than me who are like, but that's impossible because, and I say, no, the core of the story, it doesn't matter. Look, everybody else is fine. Everybody else is happy.
Yeah.
Stand down. It'll be okay.
Yeah. Don't worry about what Cinema Sins is going to say about a nitpick about your project in the future. I hate those guys.
Speaking of that, do you think it's harder? You've been doing it as long as I have. Do you think it's harder now with the internet and all of the things that come with it?
No, I think the cream still always rises to the top. I mean, I guess there is more competition and we have, more people with more access to equipment, but there's a lot of one-hit wonders out there, I think. And actually, if anything, people are so starved for content right now. I think it's actually easier probably to get a series than to get a movie made. I think that's why we're approaching it that way. And and I just there's just so many more avenues right now. There are people. I mean, if you take a look at the guys who do Stranger Things, I mean, they barely did anything before they got that show, but they had a great series Bible and they were able really to sell it. And again, take a look at this Craig Mazin guy from Chernobyl, right? If you just looked at his resume, you would never give him the money to make a mini series about Chernobyl. But he had the scripts, he had all the scripts ready, he sold it, and so I think the fact that we have so much streaming media right now has just really opened up a lot of opportunities for people who wouldn't normally have them.
So, being starved for content, what are you starved for? What don't you get, or when you get it, are you really happy to see?
Oh boy,
favorite flavor.
I gotta. Well, right now, I gotta tell you, we are in a new golden age of television. I'm going to the movies so much less and staying home so much more. And what really sort of kills me is I worry a little bit about, this is sort of weird. Should I be spending my time on The Twilight Zone and Black Mirror and Amazing Stories? Because the beauty of television is the fact that the story can go from one episode to another. And it's not like the old days where you'd have a Star Trek where every episode was self-contained, right? The story carries on throughout the whole season. So I keep wondering, I don't want to say wasting my time, because Twilight Zone, Black Mirror especially, is terrific storytelling, right? But, am I sort of getting fully emotionally satisfied as I would by following something for 8 or 10 episodes?
It's a snack, and you need the snack, and then you have your meal with your long series, I think. Yeah, no.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
So, series that you like: Chernobyl,
Barry. I like Barry a whole lot, and
yeah,
and it's so weird because the mix of comedy and drama in that show is something I never thought that anybody could really pull off, because you could see it going one way or another, but they balance it so well. I'm not even quite sure how they do it. I'd have to think about that some more.
HBO's corner. I think they're really good at that.
Yeah,
and drama, just drama too. But
yeah.
HBO for sure. What else? Are you surprised by anything? So you think surprises you anymore?
Let's see. The Watchmen series, HBO.
That was totally surprising.
That was totally surprising, because I thought, wait a second, you're going to do The Watchmen, and you're going to, again, this is subverting the audience's expectation,
100%,
right?
Yeah.
New characters, a new situation. It's going to take place 30 years later. What are you going to do with that? And they just knocked it out of the park. It was absolutely incredible.
I only watched the pilot, but I knew instantly that you were in like dangerous hands, where like, okay, everything that you thought was going to happen, get ready.
Yeah.
Fingernails.
Yeah.
Clenching into the front of the seat for sure. The dashboard.
And what's really interesting is one of my obsessions right now is trying to figure out how many episodes a series should be. HBO just had this thing. It was The Outsider. It was based on a Stephen King story.
Yeah,
and
the pilot of that
it went.
Just now.
I can't remember if it went 10 or 12 episodes, but it seemed like so much filler in the middle. I'm like, man, you really could have done this in 8 episodes.
Do it in 8, yeah. All about the size.
Yeah, and the thing about Barry is only 8 episodes, and I can tell you the midpoint, right at the end of episode 4 in each season, boom, there's this big, complication to the story that is kind of incredible. I think this is the reason why The Walking Dead, why I stopped watching The Walking Dead, is because it's 16 episodes. It's like, get on with it. Somebody on the internet pointed out that you could watch like the series, the beginning, the first season of the first episode of the season, the midpoint episode, and then from last episode, miss nothing.
Wow.
And it's absolutely true. It's like some of those things, it's absolute filler. So
Hey, so I got Ron. Ron's given us a couple of things, including Watchmen didn't have any right being that good. Bill Hader is a goddamn genius, and Better Call Saul is probably the best show on TV. What do you think about the British style of TV with only 6 episodes per season? Therefore,
I have to say, I haven't seen Sherlock. I haven't seen a lot of that stuff, so I really can't speak to the 6 episodes. But I think they really started the ball rolling in popularizing the idea that it should only be as long as it should be. And I will also say that Better Call Saul is beautifully written. The one problem with Better Call Saul is that there's an A story and a B story, and we keep waiting like too long for them to come back together. But that's what's happening right now in the show. So, but then again, you had a show like Game of Thrones where you had all these stories, and you were just waiting years and years and years for them to come together. And before the end, like when they first all the stories met, it was absolutely stunning.
Great. Should we pop over to the corporate side for a
Sure.
moment? Presumably, in those cases, you are working from a brief and you have a very short amount of time to tell your story. How do you handle that challenge?
Okay.
What's your day-to-day like on something like that?
Well, yeah, typically, most things we make are around 3 minutes or so. We have to turn things over in about 6 weeks. Yeah, but I can tell you that, back up a little bit, when I got out of film school, some people I know went to the corporate world, and then everybody told me that if you start making corporate video, your creativeness is over and your life's over, basically. I have found that to not be the case, thankfully. I think over the last 20 years or so, there's been a real change in internal communications, corporate video, that sort of thing. There's so much noise, and some of my clients get 70 emails a day. They are just and messages from their company all day long. People eventually figured out we need to make something different in order to sell it, or to sell an idea or to sell a policy. They are allowing us a lot more freedom than you would ever thought imaginable. I was doing this video recently. Use a certain piece of software. Hated it because it was sort of this piece of software. So I said,
looks like Lance, you might have frozen up there for a second. You were talking about a piece of software?
In pieces.
I think you locked up for a bit there for a second. You were talking about a piece of software before you went solid.
You're right. So so they're trying to sell salespeople on using this piece of software, and they hated it. So I said, let's reframe it as something fun. So the premise is a guy gets sucked into a Monopoly game that represents the software, and so he goes through the whole game, and we have him picking up the cards and going through mousetrap type things. I had another one where I got to do a parody of Schoolhouse Rock with an animator and a salesperson. So if you are worried about working in corporate America, it's a much different, more creative field than I ever thought it was going to be.
Now, you also say that it does wear you down a bit, such that the series work has to all be sort of delegated to the available hours and weekends and things like that. But I think that's true of anybody working any kind of job, right?
Yeah. That's true of anybody who has a day job. And I think actually the fact that there's so much story that gets inputted into our corporate world just makes you a better storyteller because you have better practice. I'll give you a couple very easy examples. I recently did a video for a general contractor and an architecture firm. Okay, and they're bidding on doing a renovation of a local hospital, right? And they didn't know how to organize all this information. They wanted to make a video for their RFP, right? So basically, I got them down to the nitty gritty, and I said, okay, what are the 3 points you're trying to reach? And they're trying to say that we can do it on time. We've already have ideas for the plan, and we have a terrific team that's already worked at this hospital. Well, then you just have to carve a story out of it, right? There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. The beginning is you've got a great team. The middle is they've got a plan, and those two elements give you the end. We're going to have it for you on time, right?
Right.
So
it is about exercising that muscle weekly, daily, and you're connecting dots the way you do with any writing project at that point.
Yeah. Absolutely. And we could some of the stuff we do gets compared to the news because we do a lot of stuff where it's interview and B-roll about a subject matter. That's a little unfair. I'll give you an example of that. We do these videos as a fund Red Cross where we honor local heroes. And they basically told us, well, we want to do something that's like this news report. And the news report was about a nurse who came upon an accident, and she sort of held the victim of the accident in such a way that the steering wheel didn't crush her and stop her from breathing. So it's a story about how this nurse saved a woman's life. Well, that's what the news would tell you. Nurse comes upon a traffic site, traffic accident, and helps the woman who's being crushed by the steering wheel. Well, that's just the middle. You need a beginning and an end to tell the story. So the beginning is about how this woman, why is she a nurse? And it's for her, it's about making the connections and being part of a person's life. And then she sort of came upon how should I say it? She sort of she got disgruntled for whatever reason, started working behind a desk, and then this accident happens, and then at the end, she became so inspired by saving this woman's life that she went back to being a trauma nurse. So even in that sort of stuff, news is only the middle of the story. We are allowed to do the beginning and the end as well.
Very good. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think what you're recognizing is that you need these solid moments, these sort of, they could be visually oriented, like, it's the Lost Ark of the Covenant. A conceptual thing, largely visual, doesn't have a story yet, and you're connecting those other pieces with other pieces you can create, and that depending on the medium, you've got a certain amount of time to tell that story. Maybe it's your 3 minutes in your corporate piece, or maybe it's your 6 hours in your HBO series. So cool.
Yeah, so all the same rules apply. So there is hope for you no matter where, no matter what field you end up in.
That's good to know, because people might be coming back from this whole experience with new options open to them. Yeah, when you said about constantly having to flex that muscle at work, I have a similar situation in the classroom. If people are doing multiple projects and I'm walking around and trying to solve problems independently, it might be a story problem, it might be a technical problem. Boy, I am like Superman on anybody else's project. It's like, if I can take that energy and apply it to my own stuff, could move mountains. As you can see, this is about the extent of it, is that we do a little something like this once in a while. Any advice for people? Oh, go ahead. This is you.
I was about to say I wrote down some other advice that I might have.
That's funny. I was just going to say, any other advice you have before we see?
Yes.
It's think, like it writes itself.
Yes. I can tell you a couple of things when you're a couple of things that have happened to me or that have been helpful to me. Again, they seem like cheats, but trust me, everybody does them. Okay. Do you guys know what the character alignment chart is? You know what this is? Have you heard of this? So I
can't wait to find out.
Really helpful. Oh,
here it comes.
Okay. The character alignment chart, if you're familiar with that, that's something that started with Dungeons and Dragons, and basically and screenwriters are using it now to sort of plot out their characters so that all your characters aren't the same. So your characters are different based upon how lawful or unlawful they are and how neutral they are. So that gives you nine squares. So I would look up the what did I just call it? The
character alignments.
The character alignment chart. I would look that up.
So what set of rules is this that there's only 9? Is that chaotic,
There's
lawful, neutral,
here-
and good and evil are mixed in there too?
No, I will tell. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's right.
Chaotic
It's
good.
yes. There's good. Yeah. So you have So you have lawful good, right? Which is like Superman. Neutral good, which is kind of like Spider-Man. He's not. He's good, but he works outside of the law. And then you have
Right.
chaotic good with like Wolf, or like Robin Hood. And then there's laws for lawful neutral, true neutral, chaotic neutral, and go all the way down to chaotic evil, which is a character like the Joker. So I would look. One thing that I noticed, this is fascinating. There was a show, I think this is Netflix, The Haunting of Hill House.
Yep.
Which is a horror series. I don't know if you're familiar with that. But what it's about these kids, and when they were kids, and now they're adults. Very apparent to me while I'm watching it. All these people, turns out, it all seems like each one of them sort of like symbolizes one of the stages of grief. There's one who's who's angry, and there's one who's always sort of bargaining with it. And then did some research. That's exactly did every sense represent themselves. The classic example I've always been taught is I don't know if you know this one, Gilligan's Island. Every character.
Yeah, I remember. I think I remember you quoting the Gilligan one in college somewhere along the way. And before you do that, I want to mention that we had a bunch of people who responded positively to your. They were worried that being a Dungeons and Dragons reference was bad, but you've actually authorized it here, henceforth.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, I've never played Dungeons and Dragons. I don't really know the first thing about it. So but I just kept seeing these memes because people have created these memes about it. I looked into the creation of the memes, and it turns out it's actually a very good writing tool for us. The classic example of characters as metaphor, which is kind of the thing with Haunting of Hill House, is Gilligan's Island. Every character on Gilligan's Island supposedly represents one of the 7 deadly sins. You know.
So
right?
Run them down. Let's prove it.
Oh, sure. Okay. The Skier is anger. Gilligan is sloth because he is so he is actually Mr. Howell is greed. Miss because she wants everybody to do everything for her. Lust.
Cutting out about half
Mary
the
Ann
time there, Lance, but I think we can probably fill in those blanks. Use your heads, folks.
Yeah.
It's patently obvious in retrospect, which is too bad.
So, and that just goes to the larger point that your story has to be about something larger than beyond the plot. This film, A Quiet Place, that was out last year or the year before. It's a movie about people running from these monsters. But what it's really about, it's really about parenthood and the sacrifices you make as parenthood. Silence of the Lambs is really about breaking the rules to get ahead. So having some sort of larger theme is also very helpful. So when you get stuck, you can always say, well, how does this relate to the theme? It's sort of a guide through the whole thing.
So here's a question for you. Do you have that theme at the beginning? Do you discover that theme halfway through? Or can you only really apply that theme in the rearview mirror?
I think you sort of stumble, and then once you sort of get halfway through planning, then it becomes obvious. Then you sort of retroactively had to fit everything.
Yeah,
I think that's how it happens most of the time. Okay.
Yeah, I don't. Hopefully, nobody sets out to do it. Yeah.
No.
To be themey. Yeah.
No, because then it's maybe artificial. It's something that you organically discover. It's part of the discovery process when you're planning the whole story. I think.
Gotta avoid preaching.
Yeah.
What other advice on your notes, lest we miss any?
Let's see. Boy, I think we covered it. I didn't expect that we would cover everything, but I'm talking very fast. Yes, you did ask me a little about what screenplay writing application I'm using. Sure. I just use Final Cut. I just started with it a long time ago and never gone to anything else. I'm not sure.
Final Draft?
I'm not sure. Final Draft. I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah. So what are you using?
I bought a number of years ago now a British one called Scrivener that's kind of made for writing all sorts of stuff. So it's got book templates and poetry templates and radio play templates, but it has also a very nice kind of note card bulletin board arrangement in the back end that's pretty fun. And any software that knows when you hit return that the next thing should be the next thing that it is a win for me. It's like the only ones that I don't like are the ones where you have to go, damn it, I'm talking about character now. Let me go, okay, character. I'm pressing a button. Anytime you have to do that.
It has to be. It has to be very intuitive, and that's that. It's the 21st century. Having something intuitive is a good idea.
Minimum. God damn it. All right.
Yes.
Lance, it's very good to see you and hear from you. And let's talk in the future. Especially if we can get a good internet connection going, I would like to have you in, not only to talk about maybe some of this series stuff, but also to moderate an upcoming episode.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. And I will say that I'm on Wi-Fi right now, but I'm switching to a hard line, and I think that will help with it. The last thing I have to say is I do have a book recommend. I do have one book recommendation.
Oh, got a book recommendation.
You want to know? Okay. I got one book recommendation. If you're interested in music in the films, I recommend Synthesizers and Saxophones. This is a wonderful book about music in the 80s. This is a fantastic read. The author's done a very good job of. You could have gone chronologically through years, but this author picks segments. He's like, okay, well, this is about this kind of movie, and this are breakdance movies, and here are stars with guitars. It's a very cleverly written book, so I would recommend that if you have an interest in movies and music.
It's mainly because I couldn't alphabetize. I didn't know how to do that.
Very good.
All right,
very good.
Thanks, Lance.
Very
good to see you, man.
Very good to see you.
Catch up with you soon, brother.
Okay. Good luck, everybody. Thank you.
All right, and that was Lance, and that's going to be our routine for tonight. Let's keep that conversation going on Facebook, and we'll see you guys on the next round of this. Signing off, folks. Catch you later. There's a button I press to make it go bye-bye.